So you guys remember that late last week, Martin Scorsese was being interviewed, doing some stuff about Irishman. And he was asked something along the lines of Marvel films, to which he made a comment that got a lot of people upset. That basically saying, those films, as well done as they are, they're not really cinema, per se. They're not cinema. I don't watch them because they're not really cinema. And, my response at the time was, well, look, I'm not going to sit here and try to lecture Martin Scorsese on what is and isn't cinema. His qualifications far outdo mine. And I said, I understand where he's coming from because, a lot of us, big fans of the comic book movie genre, a lot of us will say it is more spectacle than anything else. A lot of the comic book stuff, even some of our favorite stuff, is really more spectacle than anything else. And when it comes to the real hardcore, like a lot of the filmmaking of like character development, story arcs, all that kind of stuff, a lot of comic book movies pale in comparison to real cinematic masterpieces. Rob, you often talk about how, the next evolution of comic book movies needs to be superseding or going beyond the genre itself,
Right.
And my argument is there haven't been many that have done that. There have been a few, but not many. But I took issue with the fact that he says, how can you say something isn't cinema if you don't even watch it? And my bottom line was, Mr. Scorsese, maybe you shouldn't say what that movie is or isn't if you haven't watched it. And you might surprise yourself, Mr. Scorsese, that if you start watching them now, they have grown. They have grown. Comic book movies have grown. They've developed. They've matured. And they're getting better and better. And you might want to check them out. Well, anyway, as a lot of people online reacted to what Scorsese said, at some point you knew people involved in Marvel were going to have a comment. Now, James Gunn tweeted very quickly last week. He goes, Martin Scorsese is one of my top favorite directors. It kind of hurts me a little bit that he won't even watch my films, that he won't even give my films a shot, talking because he does some Marvel films. Well, never one to keep his opinion to himself, Mr. Samuel L. Jackson has put out a comment, and he said the following, which I actually think is pretty measured for a Samuel L. Jackson comment. But he said this, I mean, that's like saying Bugs Bunny ain't funny. I love that line. Films are films. Everybody doesn't like his stuff either. We happen to, but everybody doesn't. There are a lot of Italian Americans, and that's true. There are a lot of Italian Americans who don't think he should be making films like that, talking about his gangster stuff. Everybody's got an opinion. Ain't going to stop nobody from making movies. That's Samuel L. Jackson's comment on that. Rob, you weren't here, I believe, or were you here when we talked about the Scorsese thing? I can't remember.
Think we were Friday, right?
That's right. Oh, that's right. You were on Friday. But first of all, what Scorsese said. What do you think about Samuel L. Jackson's response to that?
Well, I think the ultimate irony is these comments come right as Joker, a comic book movie that heavily borrows from Martin Scorsese's movies. I mean, it borrows from King Comedy, and it absolutely borrows from Taxi Driver. And it's amazing to me that this controversy even erupts. Although, I think Sam Jackson is totally correct. I think he's absolutely right. And I also think what Marty, can I call him Marty? I think what Marty was saying was, he's a man who grew up liking Powell and Pressburger and Ingmar Bergman and Antonioni, and he also likes genre movies. I mean, this guy made Boxcar Bertha for Roger Corman, for gosh sakes. I mean, it's not like Scorsese doesn't know his genre movies. But I thought those comments were sort of ill-conceived, but Sam Jackson, I thought, absolutely right. Like you said, John, a measured response, a good response, and it's really just a genre. I mean, it goes back to the oldest prejudice in the world, which is against comic books as having anything valid to say. And I get it. I think he's wrong.
Chris, you hear these sorts of comments. What do you make of them?
I mean, when I heard the Martin Scorsese thing, it was just like when we heard the Mark Maron stuff before. Like, why? Why? If you don't like the movie, that's fine. If you don't like that genre, that's fine. You don't need to yuck other people's yum. And I am
that's a t-shirt right there.
Yeah, I'm so impressed with how measured and calm Mr. Jackson was here. I was expecting a lot more MRFers in that statement, and there weren't. And I think that was so on the point. Bugs Bunny taught all of us about opera, all right? A cartoon taught us about opera. Superhero movies are teaching us about kindness and friendship and all kinds of things. GTFO, Marty.
Well, look, I think it's important that we all keep in mind a couple things here. Martin Scorsese didn't come out and say these movies suck.
No.
Right.
I mean, let's be very, very clear. He didn't come out here and say what some other people said is like, those films are just for 7-year-olds. Well, he never said that. He said, hey, these films, as well as they're made, kind of saying they're made well, I don't really consider them to be cinema. Now, listen, I know this is going to be the unpopular thing to say, and that's fine. But what he said isn't all that far off from what a lot of people have said. It's like, these movies are amazing and fantastic. I mean, they're mostly spectacle and stuff like that, but they're amazing as what they are, pieces of entertainment that I really like, blah, blah, blah. What Scorsese actually said was not all that far off. Not all that far off. I still take issue, though, with the fact that he leads off that statement saying, I don't watch these, which is fine. That's fair. But then don't make a qualifying statement about them if you already said you don't watch them. So I think what Samuel L. Jackson said was fair. I think what he said was fair, although he was responding as if Martin Scorsese said their movies were no good, and he never said that. But he makes a great point. Like, there have been a lot of people over the year, being Italian myself, there have been a lot of discussions like, should, these movies, some of the movies that Scorsese makes, paints the Italian culture in a very negative way. They're awesome. I love them. But there have been a lot of people that have taken issue with that. So, but again, I never tend to get too worked up, at least I try not to, over comments somebody makes in response to a question. It's different than if Martin Scorsese held a press conference, holding a press conference, say at 1 o'clock, and he comes out and he reads, I have a statement to read. And then he made this statement about comic book films. I tend to cut people a little bit more slack when it comes to that, but it's going to be interesting.
It makes me think of when you talk to somebody who graduated from art school, though. Someone who got their degree in film, and they have to let you know that they don't go see pedestrian films. It just felt elitist to me, and I didn't jive with me.
It did, although I still say, if there's anybody who can make an elitist comment like that and get away with it,
Totally fair.
that's a small list,
Yeah.
but Scorsese's probably one of them.
Yeah.
Just saying. Anyway, guys, what do you think about Samuel L. Jackson's response to that comment? I thought it was a very even-handed response to it, actually. What do you guys think? Jump into the comments section below and let us know your thoughts. All right.